Hey guys, Matt Cobb coming to you here today with a special Thanksgiving devotion for you. And I hope today, no matter what you're doing, if you're celebrating with family, you may even be by yourself. But I pray that whatever you are doing today, you just find the opportunity and the time to truly give thanks to God. And we're going to dive into a little bit about what that means, why we give thanks, things like that. But God is so great. He is so good and gracious to us. I mean, just for the simple fact that he sent Jesus to be that sin sacrifice on our behalf. I mean, we have enough to thank God just for that. And there is so much more that he has done for us. So I hope that today finds you maybe well fed. I'm hoping to enjoy a nice big meal with my family as well too. So just enjoy today and give thanks, recognizing how much God has done for you. But I do want to look at three little passages today and kind of share the ideas of giving thanks, why we give thanks, how we give thanks, things like that. An interesting note as I was doing a little bit of study, the word thanks or giving thanks, thanksgiving, and things like that is used 114 times in the Old Testament, a lot of that being throughout the Psalms. And then in the New Testament, it's used 38 times. So almost 150 times throughout the Bible is either the command to give thanks or talking about people giving thanks, so forth. So it's pretty important. It's a critical thing that is supposed to be part of our lives. And 1 Corinthians 5:18 is in Paul's letter to the First Thessalonians 5:18. In Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, he's kind of laying out a bunch of things, and he says in verse 18, "Give thanks in everything, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." And this is coming right off of the heels of him saying, pray continually, that in all that you're doing, be praying. And he's saying, give thanks in everything as well too. And I think it's a key, it's a small thing, but it's a critical thing for us to take notice that Paul is not saying give thanks for everything. Because if we're honest, not everything in life is good. Not everything in life do we want to be thankful for. When we get horrible news, when we get that bad diagnosis from the doctor, whatever the situation may be, a loved one leaving us earlier than we want to, there are things in life that are not good that we don't want to be thankful for. But what he's saying is that we can still give thanks in. So like in the midst of everything that we're going through, we can and should give thanks. He even says, this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. And so as I was thinking about and digesting, how do we give thanks in everything? You know, in the midst of a bad situation, how do we give thanks? How do we be thankful? And it drove me to Psalm 136. Psalm 136 is a psalm that I've known for a long time. I've not memorized it, but it's a fairly simple one to memorize if you wanted to, because it uses a stylistic, poetic thing called a refrain, that every single one of the verses in Psalm 136, here, I'll just read just a little bit of it to you. Starts in verse 1, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods. His faithful love endures forever. Give thanks to the Lord of lords. His faithful love endures forever." So you see that theme. Every single one of the verses, and there are 26 verses in that psalm, end with his faithful love endures forever. And I think that is the key. His faithful love endures forever. That is what the writer of this psalm is trying to get us to understand, is that giving thanks, all of these things that he's talking about, he made the great lights, the sun to rule the day, the moon and stars to rule by night, all of these things. He even goes on to talk about the Israelites going through the Red Sea and all these things like that. And he's saying the thing above it all that we have to focus on is that God's faithful love endures forever. That's how we give thanks in everything, not for everything, but in the midst of everything and anything that we may be going through. If we will remember that his faithful love endures forever, we have so much to be thankful for. Because it also takes us from looking very short term at the here and now and gets us starting to look beyond to the forever, that God's faithful love endures forever. His love to us is never ending. That is a great thing to be thankful for. And the last passage that I want us to look at is in Ezra. I know, a little different. Most people wouldn't pull out Ezra for Thanksgiving, but Ezra 3:11 says they sang with praise and thanksgiving to the Lord. And then listen to what they sang. For he is good, his faithful love to Israel endures forever. Sound familiar? Sounds very much like Psalm 136 that we were just talking about. See, the people in Ezra's time, let me give you a little brief synopsis. I won't go too long. But the people in Ezra's time, when he's speaking to them, and the reason that this book was written is that the nation of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah in particular, had been taken captive and exiled from their land, the land of Israel that we know of near the Mediterranean Sea. They had been taken captive and in exile over to Babylon. And they had spent over 70 years as captives in Babylon. But then a king, Darius, decided, hey, I'm going to try to court some favor with these Jews. And so he allowed them to leave and go back to their homeland, to Israel. And so what he did was he allowed them to go back. And so Ezra and these group of people go back. Now, there were a lot of people that were exiled, but not so many people came back. And when they discovered Jerusalem, it was in ruins. That all of the city, the walls had been torn down, the temple had been torn down and burned, and so they had nothing. And so what they decided to do was to start with the most important thing, worship. They decided that more important than building their walls for protection and commerce and other things like that, they had to restore the right spiritual practices in order to really connect with God the right way. And so they were starting to rebuild the temple. Now there was Solomon's temple, and then there was this temple, which is also known as Zerubbabel's temple. Solomon's temple was amazing. Everything was covered in gold. It's even estimated that over half of the known gold in the world when Solomon's temple was built existed in Solomon's temple. So the grandeur and the glory and the magnificence of this temple was something to be held. And there were some people who had been taken captive to Babylon that came back that remembered Solomon's temple, but not everybody did. But listen to the latter half of this part of this Ezra 3:11. Then all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord because the foundation of the Lord's house had been laid. They hadn't even finished the whole temple, but because they had laid the foundation, they shouted with praise. Now it also goes on to say that others that had seen Solomon's glory had been, they were weeping and they were crying because it wasn't the same as Solomon's. But it said that the shouts of praise and the weeping were so intermingled, you couldn't distinguish one from the other. And let me encourage you with this. 2020 was probably a rough year. With all of the COVID stuff, it was pretty nasty. 2021 may not have been much better, where we've still been dealing with a lot of mandates and other things that haven't been allowing us to get back to what we would call normal. And so these last 2 years may not have been what you consider to be top-notch, that you want to be like, yay, I'm thankful for these. But in the midst, we can be thankful in the midst of everything going through. And let me just encourage you, there may be tears and shouts of praise happening in your life at the same time. And that's okay. And we can still give thanks, because it says they sang with praise and thanksgiving to the Lord, because his faithful love endures forever. All right, guys, be encouraged. No matter what this year has brought, God is not done with you yet, and his faithful love endures forever. So you can give thanks. Enjoy your day, whatever you may be doing with family, friends, whatever you may be doing. Give some thanks to God as well, too, remembering that his faithful love endures forever. All right, we'll catch you later, and we're going to do some Christmas devotions through the month of December. So I think it'll be lots of fun. So hope you'll join with me for that, and we'll catch you later. Have a great and happy Thanksgiving.